So when you're pregnant, you're thirsty for information, I found, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, that you're looking on websites all the time, you're trying to find everything. What's happening to me? What's this? Will my bits ever go back to normal? Why is this hanging out? What's this weird hair? You need to know everything, and that's why I wrote the book, because I needed to know everything, and it wasn't out there for me. But I'm not standing here in front of you like an incredible expert. I'm just a first-time mum, like many of you, is learning about it as I go through it. So I enlisted the help of an obstetrician, a leading obstetrician, Dr. Emma Parry, and midwife Jaquie, who's also an author, and a nutritionist and an exercise specialist, and got their information, their expertise, and put it into the book. So whenever there's a doubt, it's always backed up with medical knowledge. Now, I'll just read you a little bit about sphincter law. Now, you've all had a baby, you all know about this. I'd like to talk just a little bit about your positive frame of mind and how that can affect your birth. So, just see if you can relate to this. This is what Jaquie has to say. The passing on of birth horror stories has become ingrained within our modern society, to the point that women who have normal, uncomplicated first births can be made to feel embarrassed about how lucky they were, and this is insane. Birth has never been so safe in the Western world. The days of 1 in 10 women and 1 in 3 babies dying during birth are long gone. Yet today, fear surrounding birth is more rampant than ever. Fear is the enemy of birth, because fear produces adrenaline, which hinders the oxytocin, which is the feel-good feeling. And Ina May Gaskin, who is a midwife in Tennessee, has this theory. It's called the sphincter law. And you know what sphincter muscles are? Those muscles that go, and there's a couple down there, and I won't go into it because it's a bit early, but she talks about birth being, I don't know, is this a bit much? Is this a bit much? Birth is sexual. Birth is a sexual experience, she believes. Now, I don't know if anyone agree with that? No. Okay. Funny, isn't it? I hunted high and low for someone who had an orgasmic birth. I couldn't find anyone. But she says that nipple stimulation can help and progress labour. Privacy, if you're feeling warm and not observed and not sort of spied on, then you can really relax and actually let things happen. Warm water's great for birth. And then sphincter law. She says excretory, cervical and vaginal sphincters function best in an atmosphere of intimacy and privacy. For example, a bathroom with a locking door or a bedroom where interruption is likely or impossible. Sphincters cannot be opened at will and do not respond well to commands such as push or relax. So what she's saying is, the more we're relaxed and the more in our mind we are about letting the experience happen, the easier it will be. So I thought this, and I thought, great, fantastic. But of course, that didn't happen to me. I was all willing and all my sphincters were ready. But no, it took me about 48 hours to get him out, and it just didn't happen. So I think the main thing that I took from that, and that hopefully that you will agree with me, is that every woman and every baby and every birth and every pregnancy is different, and the most important thing is that we don't put pressure on ourselves to do it perfectly, because there is no perfect way of giving birth, just what happens to you and your baby at that particular time. And we can get so down on ourselves if we have a plan to do it naturally, or we've done these amazing yoga courses and we want to do it on one leg, singing French Christmas carols in the forest with Enya playing on the CD, but it doesn't happen like that, and then we can feel like we've somehow failed. And failure is just a word I want all of us to get rid of in our motherhood vocabulary. It should not exist. We are all wonderful, amazing women for even growing a baby and giving birth, whatever way our babies came out. So that's that. Right. Okay, so your life changes once you've had a baby in so many, many ways. And you might not even realise how it's changed until you're a few weeks in, or maybe it happens straight away. But one thing I wrote, and I thought I'd just read a little bit to you, is called "You Have Beautiful Wings." Which sounds a bit naff, but did you even know you had wings tucked up in your back there? I bet you didn't. I bet you never in a million years you thought you had beautiful wings like those. Okay, not real wings, obviously, metaphorical wings. But there's a transformation that happens when a woman becomes a mother. I've seen it in myself and in my friends, and it's a look in the eyes, it's a change, it's a softness. It's a deepening to a part of you that you only half knew. It's as if pregnancy is the chrysalis, and after birth you're changed and you emerge as a butterfly with beautiful wings. You're a mother. It's quite deep, isn't it? I described it to somebody when I had Leo, it was like a piece of me had been missing that I didn't even know was missing. And then when I had him, I felt somehow completed. And it's the most intense love I think you can ever feel. You know, if you compare the love that you feel for your partner with the love that you feel for your baby, it's so different. It's so pure. Once you've had your baby, everybody wants to come and see you, and that's fantastic, but it is so exhausting. So I wrote a little letter, which I thought would be good if you could print it out. It's also in your little handbook thingy in your bag. I thought you could pin this on your front door, actually. Hello, friends. As you know, we've just had a baby. I'm pretty tired, and while I'd love to see you and for you to meet our bundle of joy, the idea of having to get up and make you a cup of tea makes me want to crumble under the strain. To be honest, I'm so exhausted, I'm not even sure I remember how to turn the kettle on. Kettle. That's a funny word, isn't it? Kettle. Kettle. Sorry, what was I doing? Oh yeah, the letter. Right. I'd like to ask that if you want to visit us, as much as I love you, can you please keep your visit short? No longer than half an hour. Also, if you can bring over food when you visit, we'd really appreciate it. I'm a big fan of cake and those pasta dishes you can freeze easily. Thanks ever so much. Lots of love from the front line, new mummy and dad. Because it's true, people come and visit, and if they're not a mum or they don't understand, they're like, yeah, I'll have a cup of tea. And I think I made that mistake visiting one of my best friends, Jaquie, wherever she is, for the first time, and she's like, would you like a cup of tea? Oh, yeah. I didn't even realise, I didn't even think. And then, of course, when you become a mum, you realise that your friends need that support. They need you to make them a cup of tea. They need, you need to do some work. It's easy once you've had your baby to look at your body and go, disgusting, why? And it takes a very rare woman to look at her post-baby body and go, yeah, well done, body. You're rad. Let's be honest, your stomach's all flubbery, you can sink your stomach right, your hand right into the centre of your stomach, your boobs are all leaking, things are different, right? But our bodies are amazing, and so I've written this little letter to your body, to have a positive conversation with your body, because I think we don't often acknowledge just what we've been able to do. Dear body, hello. Wow, we've been through a lot lately together, haven't we? I just want to say that I really appreciate what you've done for me, and I also owe you an apology. It's really mean of me to point out all your flaws when you're recovering from birth, so I'm going to stop that now. Not only did you make a baby, you've got me from A to B, helped me dance, run, swim and love for quite a few years now, and I don't think I've ever given you credit for that. From now on, I'm going to make sure I fill you with delicious, healthy food to help you recover from the birth more easily and let you rest when you need it. I'll rub nice lotions on your skin too, don't you worry. I'm going to focus on all the amazing things you've done for me and how I'd really miss you if you collapsed and stopped working. So, sorry for all the stink things you might have heard me say about you. I love you. So I've got to remember that, ladies. It's different, but it's still beautiful. So we're all living it now. We've got this brand new life. Some of us have got 2 babies, some of us have got more. But if you're a first-time mum, you'll notice that your life has changed. And it's a beautiful thing, but it is challenging. You might be having trouble with your relationship because everything has changed, your dynamic has changed. You're sleeping differently, you're perhaps struggling with your identity as a mum. Who am I now? Am I working? Am I not? What am I doing? Will I ever get my body back? There are so many things that happen to you. And for the book, I interview a lot of different women, and their stories are throughout this book. And I asked them, what's it like? What's your brand new life like with a baby, and what does it feel like? So these are a few things that they mentioned to me. Your time is no longer your time. Somebody described to me as she was her baby's slave, and I think that's true in the beginning. You kind of are their slave. You feel connected to every other mother that has gone before you. When you see one pushing a pram, you smile at her in a way that you wouldn't have before. Gravitate towards friends with babies because you share that common ground, and you feel sad when your friends without children start to drift away. You're coping with days that feel like nights, that feel like afternoons, that feel like days, and everything is hazy in those first 2 weeks. You'll feel conflicted about what to do when your baby cries and what the crying means and how to make it stop, and you'll cry lots too. And you'll wish that Charlene Poole was somehow genetically modified and could be in a million places at once. Some days will be easy and some days will be really hard, and you'll have moments in the middle of the night where you're feeding for what feels like the 100th time, And part of you will wonder if you're going to be stuck doing this forever, and maybe this is your life now. You love your baby, but you feel a little bit sad about saying goodbye to the old you, and you wonder if you'll ever see her again, and you kind of feel guilty about feeling like that. Even though you love your baby and you don't want to be away from her, you feel envious of your partner for being able to leave the house every day. And it strikes you that you are the only one that can feed your baby right now, and you feel a bit trapped and this enormous sense of responsibility. You feel as if you've never loved anything as much as you love your baby, and you spend hours marvelling at the beauty and perfection of their tiny face. And you realise the relationship dynamic has changed now because you're 3 or maybe you're 4. And for the first time you find that your baby is more interesting and kissable than your partner. You keep that to yourself. You catch yourself in a moment when it's just you and your baby and your partner, and you're just playing together, and you think perhaps this could be the happiest you've ever been, and you feel grateful that you've been able to have a baby. You feel wildly protective of your baby, and your mind plays tricks on you, like, I had this horrible vision that someone somehow was going to come into the gate, which is locked, sneak into our house and cut off his fingers with scissors. That's what my mind did when I was sleep deprived and hormonal. Like, no, not the scissors. You'll find simple things like driving somewhere in the car with your baby a major ordeal at first, but the more you do it, the more confidence you gain. I could hardly leave the house for 7 weeks. And I can hear babies crying, so I'll stop there. But all this and more in my book. There are many different things that happen to us, but I think one of the biggest challenges that we face is getting your baby to sleep. How will your baby sleep? I was lucky enough to meet the amazing Charlene Paul, a gift to the world, I would say. She will not be wrapped up in paper and with a ribbon on her today. She somehow refused. But Charlene has an incredible gift that she's able to understand babies and settle them in the most loving and nurturing way. And if I hadn't had her in my life, I would be going crazy. So, Charlene, do you want to come up?
Thank you very much for having me. It was a privilege for me to help Jaquie, but it's a privilege for me to help all the mums that I help, because I know it's such a special thing when you have a baby, and to have someone else in your home and to come and give you advice is an honour, and I've had that honour through many years now. For those of you who don't really know my history or how I know what I know, it wasn't just a gift that I was born with. I definitely was born to work with babies and changed my first nappy when I was 5, and I used to plead to my mum every time an auntie and uncle had a new baby, can I go and stay there please? And mum used to put me on a bus from Tauranga, and I used to come up and stay and just watch and learn. So something I definitely had a gift, but up until after my training I went overseas and worked as a British maternity nurse, which is when you work 24 hours a day, 6 days a week for the first 8 to 12 or 15 weeks of a baby's life. And so the mums I chose to work for over there were mums who wanted to be mums rather than the traditional style maternity nurse, which is where you did it all. So I chose mums that wanted to breastfeed and wanted to be a mum, but they, because of the way they had been brought up in generally aristocratic England or just a different lifestyle, they employed me 24 hours a day to be there for them. And that's when I suddenly learned how hard it is to be a mum without being a mum. So 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, I had these babies. Now, when I started my training, of course, I learnt all the fundamentals of how to change a baby's nappy, how to settle them, how to burp them. But, oh my goodness, when I started working 24 hours a day for many babies, for 7 years continuous, I was so sleep deprived that it challenged all those wonderful techniques that I'd learnt, and some of them didn't work, which is what I understand now is what mothers go through. You know, you might read many books, you might get friends who tell you X, Y, and Z, but at the end of the day, when sleep deprivation takes over, it changes the whole thing. And your logic goes out the window, and mine did too. So I was challenged when I was doing this job overseas to test and twist and change all these techniques that I had learned as a foundation and ended up making my own. When I decided that I'd sort of had enough of travelling around the world, and I was fortunate enough to work in countries like India and Bali and Japan and recently Russia, I was exposed to lots of different ways of bringing up children, but when I came back to New Zealand, I was asked by many friends if I could, help them, and they all encouraged me to start my business, which I never ever thought I would be doing, and let alone doing this. And what it seems to me is that because we're so detached from living the way that I saw in India, or I saw in many countries around the world, where you're supported 24 hours a day for the first 30 days of having a baby. Most cultures have confinement time, and your mother or mother-in-law are there with you. You don't do a thing except for feed the baby. Now, every single culture does that apart from the Western culture. So when I came back to New Zealand and started my business, I realised even though we've got a lot of support and we have so much, we're so much, luckier than other countries, there still is that thing that when you're doing it 24 hours a day on your own, as a mum or as a parent, it is much harder than when you've got somebody there who's confident 24 hours a day. So the techniques that I generally am going to teach mums are things like settling a baby, because not everyone can have that ability to have a baby on them the whole time. Not every baby can tolerate being held all the time. I've realised now it comes down to the personality of the baby, and whether you've got a very inquisitive, wise baby, or whether you've got a passive baby who can just have the ability to close their eyes and go to sleep, or whether you've got the live wire who is just constantly looking around and taking in the environment and getting overstimulated because of it. And then the confidence of the mum. You can't gain confidence overnight, and it took me many years to gain the confidence that I have now. I've just been down in Invercargill doing a seminar down there for 120 people on Saturday night, and there was a baby crying down the front of the stage, and in my head I'm thinking, I should settle that baby because I'm the baby whisperer, but if I risk it and it doesn't work, then I'm going to look like a fool. But I decided to do it, and the baby did settle up on the stage with these bright lights. And what I explained to the mums, it's not because I've got some amazing gift, it's just that I'm 100% confident in what I do, and I'm 100% confident in the fact that I know I can settle a baby. I've gained that confidence over years and years and years, whereas you as parents, you're expected to have that confidence overnight. As soon as you've got that baby in your arms, you're expected to be confident, and that's really, really difficult. So the techniques that I use, and I'm going to do a little demo of my settling technique today because we don't have enough time to go through everything that I know, but the one tool I think Jaquie would agree that it does make a difference for a lot of my mums is learning how to settle a baby in their bed rather than always being with you. And this is, like as I was saying before, because we are on our own, we do need to have a moment in the day to have a shower or to make dinner or so forth. And if we had that wonderful support, excuse me, if we had that wonderful support 24 hours a day, we might not need to know the settling technique of how to settle a baby in a bed. But because we are on our own, a lot of mums require this. So I thought I'd just do a little demo, cut through, talk about the basics of my technique of settling, and then we'll open up some time for questions.
So I'll just talk loudly so I hope everyone can hear. The first
fundamental thing I think that a lot of people are challenged with is swaddling a baby or wrapping a baby. And I know that just about every single new parent I go into their house, when I say, do you swaddle your baby or wrap your baby, they go, oh, my baby doesn't like it. And I say, I get that from every single parent. And there's very, very few babies I recognise that unless you're choosing to do a style of parenting where you don't expect a baby to sleep for long periods in their bed, then they might not need to be swaddled. But the main reason I believe in swaddling is your newborn baby, until they're roughly 3 months of age, has the startle reflex, the Moro reflex. So every single time they go into a light sleep cycle, which is roughly 45 minutes, or every single time there's a loud noise or a bang or phone rings, they'll often do a little jump. And those babies who are the visual inquisitive babies, more so than the passive personality babies. So if you're swaddling them, you're giving them a sense of comfort while they're in their bed and away from you. Now, I do, without looking as if I'm being a good saleswoman, I do actually love this merino swaddle because it has got a bit of give, and I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of mums is keeping the arms in of those very strong babies. And when your swaddle has got a little bit of give, it makes it easier for them to be snug inside the wrap. And I believe in settling babies on their side. It's not that you necessarily need to sleep your baby on their side, subject to, the World Health Organization recommending that they sleep on their back. It's just that what I figured out when I was maternity nursing is every single time I put the baby down on the back, particularly with their sensitive digestive system and having a lot of wind, every single time I turned them onto their side, I was able to tap their bottom and create the rhythm of what happened in the womb. So when you're pregnant and the baby's in the womb, you're walking around during the day, boom, 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 boom. And so that's why babies like the heartbeat, and that's why they like this action that I do. And then when you're stationary and you sit down often at the end of the day when you're pregnant, that's often when the baby will start kicking. So what I'm trying to replicate with my settling technique is what happened in the womb, and that is the rhythmic patting motion. When I first started doing it, I used to do the same rhythm the whole time, and I thought, oh wow, I found this amazing technique, and it used to take me maybe 20 minutes to get a baby to sleep. Since then I've modified it in the fact that I'll use a distractor, which you'll see is the fast technique, and then I slow it down in accordance to the baby's behaviour, because what I realised, particularly with those visual and inquisitive babies, was that if I kept on doing the fast distracting movement the whole time, I actually was keeping the babies awake. So I had to wait for them to go up and then down the other side and go to sleep. Whereas now what I'm trying to do is stay one sort of step ahead of them and sort of not confuse their mind, but just keep it different so that I'm not keeping them awake. So I'll demonstrate the technique and then ask questions at the end. So swaddle the baby. Now the important thing is if you are going to settle your baby on the side, you do need to swaddle them with their arm across from the body, because if you're using what I call the straight jacket swaddles, the purpose-made swaddles that are designed for have your baby's arms down the side, if you roll your baby onto the side like that, they'll get a bit of a dead arm and it won't be comfortable for them, but also it won't be safe, because if you do leave the room and go in and out of the room at all, your baby could roll onto their tummy. So it's really important that when you're swaddling that you bring the arm across the front of their body before you swaddle their arm. And so once they're swaddled, another reason I turn them onto their side is because it's out of sight, out of mind. Now this is a huge thing for babies and mothers, because that when your baby is looking stressed and overtired, and if you look at their eyes, it makes your heart go like that as a mother. So by turning them away from you, you're sort of stopping that stimulation, and which can make you more stressed as a mother. So turning them onto their side, putting my hand over top of their hands, and then their legs are in recovery position, which enables me to get to their bottom. If their legs were swaddled into a straight position, I wouldn't be able to tap their bottom. So I'm putting their leg into recovery position, and then as I talked before, I'm going to do what I call the distractor when they're crying. So I start with hands over their hands. And what I'm doing, let's see if I can bring this over here a bit. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to use the distractor. The fast heartbeat is exactly the same as if they were crying and you were holding them, you'd be going shh, 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 shh. But I'm trying to do that in the bed. So onto their side, hand over them, and shh, 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 shh. What I have noticed is that when they're firstborn, you don't need to take your hand off their bottom, and you can do what I sort of best describe as a shunting action. So you're just moving their body gently like that. But the babies who get a lot of digestion wind, or a lot of babies who are a lot more robust and a little bit more active, they will respond better to more of a hands-off action, more of like a tap. So either doing your hand like this, or in some cases I use my wrist. So once they stop crying, then what I do is I start slowing it down to slow their heart rate down. So they start crying again. And then to finish off, I do what's like a vibration. I'm trying to replicate the movement that babies respond to if they're in a car or in a buggy, and that is the sort of movement. So I'm going to finish off, as they're starting to calm and go to sleep, I'll finish off with a vibration movement.
How long should this all take?
Good question. Every baby's different, and that's why it's very hard to try and solve a problem in a situation like today, because if your baby is overtired before you get them into bed, it's going to take longer for you to calm them down and wind them down. So what I would say to those mums, that if you know your baby's overstimulated or overtired, meaning they've got their eyes wide and they're screaming, then I try to calm them first over your shoulder in, the snuggle position. And if that isn't working and your heart is racing, then I just say get them into bed and start the technique. So give or take, I guess, I would say an average time would be 10 to 15 minutes maximum, but it's going to take a lot of mums a little bit longer to start off with.
So you say that would be 10 to 15 minutes of you being consistently with the patting and the shushing, and then do you leave?
Yeah, so what I would do, every single mum's different. So some mums don't believe in leaving their babies to have a grizzle or a cry, and some mums are okay about leaving their baby to have a grizzle. So if I'm doing the settling technique and I know that baby is way overtired, they haven't responded to being cuddled, then what I actually do is I will put a little roll in the front to prevent the baby rolling onto their tummy, and I'll tuck them in nice and tightly, and then I might walk away. I get the mum to walk away. Now whether that is for 30 seconds or whether it's up to 3 minutes, that comes down to the mum. And then come back into the room with a fresh approach, because what I've found is a lot of mums, when their heart's racing and it's not working, and they're sometimes shushing so much they're spitting on the babies, which I've done many times, especially when I was a novice, and I'd be going, and your heart's beating, then you're actually stimulating your baby and making it worse. So some mums, if they don't want to leave their baby to cry, they'll pick them up, they'll try to calm them down again, and then they'll give it a go, where other mums might put the wedge in and walk out of the room, take a deep breath and go, okay, now have I winded them? Yes, I did. Have I, are they well fed? Are they looking and rooting and looking for the breast? And if they are, what's the point in doing the settling technique? I'll give them some more milk. And it gives you a chance, if you walk away for a short period of time, to think about all of those things. Whereas if you're in there and your heart's racing and you're doing that settling technique, it will turn into what I would describe as a battle, and that becomes a negative. So I use an in and out of the room settling technique, or mums who don't believe in leaving their babies to have a cry, then they will do a pick up, put down in conjunction with my settling technique.
I think it's really good that you mention all those little things, a little checklist. And in fact, Charlene and I worked together on creating a little checklist that you go through before you know what's wrong with your baby, which is in the book, which my good friend Jaquie here in the middle taught me about, because when I went to visit her with her first baby, she had a little post-it note by the door which had winded, fed, nappy, temperature, and some other things, so she'd know, okay, got to check those off, because when you're sleep deprived, you're like, I can't remember what's happened.
When your baby's crying,
yeah, when your baby's
all
crying,
that stuff goes out of the head. Yeah.
I just have one question for Charlene, which I'm sure you probably like to know, and then we'll open it up to you guys to ask some questions, and that is, why won't my baby sleep through the night?
That's a very good question, and it's one that isn't easily answered. Because every single baby is different, but every single baby has the ability to sleep well at night if their daytime is good. So a lot of mums will say, oh, you know, every baby's different. My baby has slept through the night at 7 weeks, or my baby slept through the night at 3 months. And that relates to so many different things. That relates to how well they sleep during the day. So babies, there are 2 types of babies. Excuse me. There's some babies that sleep hardly any length of sleep during the day, and they're so exhausted they sleep all night because of exhaustion. Or there's another type of baby who will do those short sleep cycles all throughout the day and then wake all night because they didn't feed well during the day, and so they're catching up at night. So when mums say to me, how do I get my babies to sleep through the night, I say, well, first I want to look at your day. And let's see if your baby is sleeping well during the day, feeding well during the day, and cross off all of those possibilities before we look at why they might not be sleeping at night. So generally, on a whole, I'd say 90% of babies that I help, or parents that I help with night issues, it relates to what's going on in the daytime. And I see a lot of that in today's world because we're stimulating our babies a lot more than when we were babies. You know, we're out and about. Babies have taken in and out of car seats and here, there and everywhere. And so they're learning to sleep in broken sleeps, which doesn't teach them how to, feed well on a long-term basis for the majority of babies. You're very blessed if you've got a baby who is a foodie and will just feed whenever you offer it to them. And you're very blessed if you've got a baby who's a passive baby and just has the ability to shut their eyes and go to sleep in any environment. Majority, or 99% of my clients that I see have got the babies who are very visual inquisitive, and so therefore they're affected in the daytime, and that in turn affects their nights.